Okay, well, let's get rolling here, Ben. Friday
Yeah.
afternoon.
Yep.
We had a great week.
We
You know,
did.
we spent a little time together this
We
week
did indeed.
watching the crypto conference online. 3 packed days of learning things that are very difficult to understand. But I feel like I have a much better grasp on it after these 3 days. Wouldn't you,
Mhm.
Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I attended last year. I think, as I've said before, it was a mind-blowing event, and this year again was even more so. The speed at which things are happening in the technology is really hard to grasp, and just the pace at which it's going and the innovation that's happening. It's a complete change from what you see in the general world in finance right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's something we've both been following for a long time, and it's
Yep.
one of those things that it's hard to articulate to people exactly what it is. And if any of you have been watching the podcast or the video podcast or the YouTube channel we've been doing, I think I've mentioned this before, and this is the best way
Sorry.
to put it
I
is,
got I need
yeah,
just 1 second. Just gotta deal with the dogs here.
yeah, okay, I'll keep it going here. I mentioned this before, there's always so many questions, so much, hesitation about any kind of new technology. But I've kind of boiled it down to, it's kind of like where the internet was, in the early 90s, where, people would start to talk about it, didn't really understand what it was and how people would communicate, right? And then it started to gain momentum and people could really see how it would change the world in a positive light, right? People were always like, oh, people are going to use the internet to breach my privacy and stuff like that. And people, those are the same conversations that are having with this,
Yep.
right? But if you think about how the internet has changed the world, it's completely changed it. I
Yep.
think we're in another phase like that. And I think we've gone through some micro phases of that
Sure.
as well between the two, between
Mhm.
the internet and now, right? As far as social media is concerned,
Mhm.
right? The resistance around that when that first came out, right? About
Mhm.
privacy and whatnot. And then the smartphones as well, right? Like that was a whole other uh big turning point as well. And now we have crypto and blockchain, and I think it's just going to be it's going to change the way that we transact on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think that's it. I mean, we can talk a little bit more as we go into it, but I think that's a good opening.
Yeah. So let's talk about just a couple I just have a couple of housekeeping things. As far as, obviously, it's tax season, so we have a lot of people that have been asking um, for their tax documents. So you should have received your tax documents in the mail from CIBC. If not, you should do your best to reach out to CIBC directly because we don't have access to any of those things, as we keep saying. The other thing is, if you require any tax documents from us, do they send them in the mail, Ben? Sorry.
So it depends if you have electronic setup, it's going to be on the
Yeah.
website. If you have any trouble accessing it, we can do it, and we've had some people request that, and we've been sending the
Yeah.
PDFs out. So we do have that. If you do need a CIBC gain loss though as well, we can do that. But if it's a T slip, it's either coming from directly from CIBC or it's coming from the mutual fund company. It'd be both that it'd be coming from. If it's from the fund company and you can't get it, we can certainly help intervene there as well.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, great. Uh, so that, and then the other thing to mention too, right before we talk about what we've been up to this week is, uh, I just like to promote. We shot a podcast last night with
Mhm.
Renee McNeil from Ottawa Mortgage Brokers, and I was like, I wasn't super excited about it, but
Yeah.
at the time before we did it,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, well, how does that really mix in here? But it was super interesting, and a lot of things. I mean, I was in the real estate industry for 20 years, and our guest was talking about stuff I had never heard of before, different options for your mortgage and investment property. And Ben and Renee had a bit of a debate. I don't know if it was a debate because they ended up on the same side, but a bit of a debate about, whether it's better to buy, hold mortgage, or sorry, hold real estate as an investment, or invest in the market. So very interesting as far as that's concerned. So that'll come out as soon as I would get that back from the editor. So probably Sunday or Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Ben. Everybody's been dying to know, right? They've been dying to know what happened this week. What'd you do for everybody?
Yeah,
What?
so it was a challenging week. I mean, I think we talked the last couple of weeks just about the environment we're in. We started to see tech roll over, and so that caused me to think about, are we starting to transition out of this growth plus inflation backdrop, which we've been in now for quite some time, and we did have a couple of days which would go into that quad two bucket, which is, slowing growth and slowing inflation. So we had a couple of days where we had, interest rates sell off and bonds rally. So I had a week ago had bought some U.S. 10 years. So I had decided to trim that and take some profits on it. So the only real sales this week were in treasuries, as well as I did trim a little bit of Bitcoin, and bought some MicroStrategy with the proceeds. We had Bitcoin flat on the day. MicroStrategy was down 8% yesterday. So took the chance to take advantage of the stock being weak and the commodity being strong. So that was that's worked out well. But when you get multiple days in a row where there's selling pressure on the stocks you like, it definitely makes you could question if you want to stay with your positions, even though you believe there's still upside. So, I stayed with them. I added a few new names: Boyd Gaming, Cinemark, Duty Free, which is, I think, one of the best opportunities over the next little while as the world starts to reopen again. You get people flooding back to the airports and travel. You get obviously duty free, which is the luxury duty free that you get at all the airports in the world now. So that stock's trading at a really good discount, and so that looks like a good opportunity here. Guess, Galaxy Digital, and EOS Energy as well has sold off. So there was a lot of things, a lot of opportunities this week, and the last, I'd say, last hour of the trading session, yesterday and the trading session today worked out well for all those stocks that we'd bought. So that's nice to see. And so I still think we're in that growth plus inflation, at least for the near term. I think we're starting to see some stabilization in yields, and we're starting to look towards what's coming next, but it's not here yet. And you got to be patient and just stay with where the trend is for now.
Sounds like your dogs have have an opinion as well. They want to get in on it.
The pleasure of meeting Denver this week, and he's full of beans.
For sure.
He definitely hasn't. He wanted to have his opinion known today, so that's
For
awesome.
sure. Yeah, it's great. That's always good for the recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have anything else for this week before we move on, or?
So I'd say the only other thing that I'd say from a market perspective this week is giving an update on what's happened from a finance perspective. And the market was pretty active there. We had a bunch of resource companies: Wallbridge Mining, Aurora Resources, Slate. Telus did a huge raise yesterday, and felt pretty flat. The market didn't like it. 1.3 billion raise, and it's still not sold out yet. RBC still has a bunch of stock on their books, so that didn't trade as very well as they'd hoped. A couple other resource companies raised money, but really active this week. Lots of financings done, mostly all in the equity space too. So not too much in the bond space this week. I think the big one coming up next month will be Coinbase, obviously in the U.S. That's a huge crypto company. It'll be the first one really to go public, since this has happened. So that'll be interesting to see how that trades. So I'd say that's it for this week and what happened, but certainly lots of action, lots of moments, wondering if the trend was going to hold, and it has. So I continue to stay with the belief that we're headed higher.
Great. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of that. We'll give you a couple minutes to think of anything that you want to talk about or you want to ask that Ben just mentioned. But just before we transition about what's planning this week, just something in the news as far as I know you had sent me a quote, which I can't find, so maybe you can help me with that. But just about that, the conversation we had earlier about that ship stuck in the Suez Canal. What was that quote that you had? The number was staggering. Do you remember
Yeah.
what it
So
was?
for every hour that the ship at the Suez Canal is blocked, it's costing the global economy $400 million
For every hour.
for every hour. Yeah. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. Wonder
Yeah.
how they're gonna get that thing out. Just gonna-
The funny thing is too, you see the little diggers, like these tiny little diggers, like trying to get
yeah,
the sand out, and the tugs are trying to pull it out, but they're afraid they're going to tip the thing over, and then it's going to
yeah,
take them another week to get it out of there. So, yeah, it's amazing how important those waterways are to ship all the global goods. So that's going
yeah,
to put some short-term pressure on a lot of things.
yeah. What did you say too? It was responsible for 10% of what was
Global
it?
trade, global
Global trade.
trade.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
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 insane.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, why don't you give us a lowdown on what you expect to do on next week, the week coming up?
Yeah, so I'd expect that as we get into month end here, this is first quarter of 2021 as well. Month end, you get a lot of action, a lot of activity around some of these names. We look at some of the big high flying tech names. I just looked at Shopify this morning. It's down 10% year to date. So some of these big high flyers of last year aren't having the start that they hoped and that they had last year. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. You get a lot of fun flow out of the kind of the, we'll call it the losers, and into the things that are working. So I'd expect you actually see a bit of lift into kind of small cap, financials, and energy, commodities. These things have worked, so you get a lot of the hedge funds of the world kind of marking their books to show that they have these on their portfolios for quarter end. So I'd expect a lot of action coming in those names as we get into month end. So that's what I'd be expecting, and continue to think about what the next quarter is going to be like. But that's what I expect over the next 4 or 5 days.
Great,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up to any questions in general, or any questions anybody has for Ben. You want to talk about? It doesn't have to necessarily be, just on what we talked about. If any thoughts on, if you want to know more about crypto, Bitcoin, stuff like that we've learned this week, we could talk about that.
Yeah,
Did you
so I
have
think
something?
I'm probably going to hit on a couple of things. It's interesting as I talk to people this week and over the last couple of weeks, talk to people both in my circle in finance, and really, the my colleagues that I talk to and say I'm attending a crypto event. They're like, why would you do that? Like, what's the interest? Where's the opportunity there? And it's staggering at what the amount of future potential that there is in and really where finance is going. We just listened to a speaker talk about, he was looking to wire some money to another part of the United States. He was in the US, and because he came into the bank branch after 2:30 p.m., they wouldn't wire it to the third party in the next day. And he talked about the costs associated with doing that. There was a conversion as well. It ended up costing him somewhere between 6 and 8% to do the transaction. It took, yeah, about 12 hours for that transaction to happen. And then when we were looking at and we're listening to where they're going right now with the crypto transactions on these different networks, you can do it at basically somewhere around, 10 cents on the dollar, or sorry, 10 cents on a $100,000 transaction. So pennies on the dollar, and the speed is instantaneous versus something that can take multiple hours. It's just it's amazing how much of an opportunity there is coming. And so, as we look at this, a lot of these companies are still private, so you can't invest in them yet. But there's others that are trading now, like Galaxy Digital, which I've mentioned, Silvergate, which is a public bank right now. Axios Financial. There's some of these companies that are starting to think about this, and really it's a huge opportunity. And the objective is for consumers to save money. And so, I think as that message starts to get out there, people are going to realize and say, okay, well, now I start to understand where the opportunity lies, and start to understand, this is a benefit for me. This is a way for me to save costs and be more efficient and be able to transact on my time, not just when the bank is open 10 to 4. So I think it's a really interesting, unique opportunity that you need to still dig around, and we're still in the early days of it, but it's unreal at how fast this thing is moving.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of same thing. Like if we had a time machine and we could go back, how many people look at stocks like Amazon and Facebook and Google now, right? And think, man, I wish I would have known
Mhm,
what I know now about those. Right. And I guess that goes for any really stock that really hits,
mhm,
right? And I think that's why we're spending so much attention on it, is because we see the potential of these things being exactly those, right?
mhm.
All right, we got a question from Lyle. What are the dangers to the market and consumer debt and liquidity of the real estate bubble in Canada during the recovery?
Mhm. Let's see here. I just gotta have a look at it here.
Hmm.
I lost it for a sec, so I just gotta see here.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that the bank is quite aware too, around the central bank is quite aware that this is a legitimate issue, and I think that's why rates are going to be pinned here around these levels. There's been, sorry, I just give me 1 second. I
Sure.
apologize. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. All right.
It's dog entertainment today. Won't happen again.
You just couldn't take it anymore, right?
Couldn't take it. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I mean, I think the real estate market obviously has gone vertical in Ottawa, and I think we had, obviously, part of our conversation last night. We talked about that. One
Mhm.
of the things that Scott asked Renee was, what happens when these valuations are coming in 100, 200,000 over what the actual ask price was, and what she said is that they've started to come back and saying we're not going to do them at those levels. And so, I think you've seen some of that too, where the appraisers are bringing it in. They're trying to manage and control it. So, I think it's a risk, but it's been a known risk for probably 10, 15 years in Canada. And so I don't think it's a huge risk in the near term. Ottawa has an interesting market where it's very tech government heavy. And so those sectors right now are pretty stable and secure. So the risk is interest rates run, and the likelihood that interest rates run is really low right now. So I'd say that if people have jobs and rates are low, they can continue to refinance, roll it out, extend the debt, and push it out from that perspective. So that, while that's a risk and a concern for me, I don't think it's in my top three at this point.
Great. Good to know.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for Ben? Do we want to bring the dogs back?
Yeah, I think they'll probably introduce themselves anyways at some point. I think as they got lots to say today. But as we get into quarter end, I know I always start to think about doing my quarterly reviews and quarterly commentaries. So, as that starts to come together, we'll write more and more details about what we learned this past week. And really provide a general update on where I see the opportunities, and really how I think about positioning longer term.
Great. Okay. Well, let's if there's no other questions for today, we're gonna wrap that up. It's been a busy week, as it typically is. So
Mhm.
looking forward to the weekend. Ben, what are you doing on the weekend? Any plans?
Not too much. A few kids' activities. How about you?
Yep, same thing. Yep, just being a dad taxi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Standard role.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, everybody. Well, as always, you know how to get a hold of us at the office. And if there's anything else, if not, have a great weekend and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks.